Today, we're diving into a hidden world, an invisible empire of organisms that are so small yet so powerful they actually run our entire planet. This is the world of environmental microbiology, and trust me, it's more important than you can possibly imagine.
So let me just start by asking you a question. When you think of the most important organisms on Earth, what pops into your head? Giant redwood trees, maybe blue whales, or maybe even us. It's totally natural to think of the big stuff we can see. But the real answer, well, it's found in a world you can't even see. The most crucial forms of life are actually bacteria, fungi, and other microbes. They are everywhere. I mean, everywhere. From boiling hot springs to the ice in Antarctica, and even deep inside solid rock. They are the tiny, unseen engines that keep our world running. So here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to explore what microbial ecology is really all about. Then, we'll see how these tiny organisms are basically nature's ultimate recycling crew. We'll take a plunge into their role in our water, find out how they help us spot invisible dangers, and finally, look at how we're actually engineering them to help build a cleaner world. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Environmental microbiology is really the study of microbial ecology, which is just a fancy way of saying we're studying how microorganisms relate to their environment. It's all about this incredible, intricate relationship between these tiny life forms and literally everything around them. And I love this analogy from the source material. It describes the activity in soil as a biological fire. But this isn't a fire that destroys. It's a fire that transforms. It's this constant, slow burn of decomposition, where microbes are just consuming all that organic matter and releasing its core elements right back into the ecosystem for new life to use. And the scale of this biological fire, it is just staggering. Get this, a single gram of typical soil, that's about the weight of a paperclip, can have about 1 billion bacteria. A billion with a B. That's a billion tiny engines all working away in just a pinch of dirt. This job, as decomposers, leads us right into one of their most critical functions. Microbes are, without a doubt, nature's greatest recyclers. They take the fundamental building blocks of all life, we're talking carbon, nitrogen, sulfur, and they convert them into forms that other organisms can actually use. Without them, the whole system just grinds to a halt. This whole process is known as a biogeochemical cycle. And really, all it means is that microbes are constantly breaking down and rebuilding chemical elements, just to get the energy they need to live. And as a byproduct of their own survival, they perform this service that is so essential that without these cycles, life on Earth would just stop.
Let's take the big one, the carbon cycle. You've got microbes like algae and cyanobacteria that act like tiny plants, pulling carbon dioxide right out of the atmosphere to grow. Then, when they and other things die, decomposer microbes break them down and, boom, that carbon dioxide gets released back into the air. It's a perfect loop, and it is the foundation of the entire global food web.
Then you've got the nitrogen cycle. Now, our atmosphere is almost 80% nitrogen, but for most living things, it's useless in that form. It's kind of like being in a room full of canned food with no can opener. But certain bacteria can fix it. They can grab that atmospheric nitrogen and convert it into something useful, like ammonia. Then other bacteria turn it into nitrates, which plants can absorb to build the very proteins that make up, well, you and me. This whole critical process is almost entirely dependent on bacteria. And microbes don't even need the sun to build worlds from scratch. In the crushing dark of deep-sea hydrothermal vents, you have these things called chemoautotrophic bacteria. They are the main producers down there. They harness chemical energy from compounds like hydrogen sulfide to create organic matter. They are the base of a food chain that thrives in complete and total darkness. It just proves that life, with microbes leading the way, can find a way pretty much anywhere. Okay, so now let's shift gears. Let's move away from soil and the deep sea and turn our attention to the world's most abundant habitat, water. This is the world of aquatic microbiology, and it's all about what microbes can tell us about the health of our lakes, rivers, and oceans. The link between microbes and the health of water is incredibly direct. Clean water that doesn't have a lot of nutrients is usually clear, and it supports a pretty small microbial population. But when you start adding nutrients, say from sewage or agricultural runoff, it's like dumping fertilizer on a garden. You get this massive population explosion of microbes, the water gets all murky, and it's a dead giveaway that you've got pollution. Now, a big bacterial population tells us something's wrong, but it doesn't really tell us what's wrong. The most dangerous type of water pollution is contamination from human waste, because it can carry some really nasty pathogens. But trying to find each specific pathogen would be impossible. So how do we find these invisible threats?
Well, the answer is actually pretty clever. Instead of hunting for the dangerous pathogens themselves, we look for something else. Water purity tests look for specific indicator organisms, microbes that basically act as a reliable red flag for fecal contamination.
Now, to be a good indicator organism, a microbe has to check a few important boxes. First, it has to be consistently found in human feces in really big numbers. That way, if you find it, you know where it came from. Second, it has to be able to survive in water at least as long as the real pathogens do. And finally, you have to be able to find it using simple, reliable lab tests.
So, in the United States, the most widely used indicators are a group called coliform bacteria. They fit this very specific biological profile, which makes it easy for scientists to spot them. And here's the key. The main type of coliform found in feces is E. coli. So, if you find coliforms in a water sample, it is a very, very strong sign of contamination.
And this is how we detect them. This is an ONPG and mug test, and it is just beautiful in its simplicity. If the water sample turns yellow, that means coliforms are present. But if it also glows blue under a UV light, well, that confirms the presence of E. coli specifically. It's a clear, unmistakable visual signal that there's fecal contamination.
So, we've seen how microbes maintain the planet and act as our little watchdogs for its health. Now let's look at how we are actively putting their power to work for us. We can actually use microorganisms as partners to help solve some of our biggest pollution problems. And the scale of the problem we're facing is immense. Every single year, industrial plants in the U.S. alone generate 265 million metric tons of hazardous waste. A lot of this stuff is really difficult and expensive to clean up with normal methods. But for microbes, it can just be another meal.
This whole process is called bioremediation. It's basically the use of microbes to detoxify or completely break down pollutants. Some bacteria can literally eat toxic chemicals like petroleum, while others produce enzymes that just tear toxins apart into less harmful stuff. We are essentially just hitting the fast-forward button on nature's own cleanup process.
And here is a fantastic example of just how powerful this can be. This is a beach in Alaska after an oil spill. Now, the untreated part is still a mess, totally covered in oil. But the section on the right was treated with bioremediation. And the cool part is, scientists didn't add any new microbes. They just added fertilizer. This supercharged the bacteria that were already there and naturally eat oil, and they just went to town cleaning up the beach.
We've also built entire industrial processes around this idea. And the best example is sewage treatment. It typically happens in 3 stages. Primary treatment is all physical, just screens and settling tanks to get the big solids out. But secondary treatment, that's where the real magic happens. It's a biological process where we let microbes do all the heavy lifting. Finally, tertiary treatment cleans the water even more, sometimes to the point where it's pure enough to drink again.
And the heart of that secondary treatment is right here, in the aeration tank. Air gets pumped like crazy through the wastewater. Why? To create the perfect oxygen-rich home for specific microbes to just thrive. Then a small amount of activated sludge, which is just packed with billions of these sewage-eating microbes, is added. They rapidly devour all the organic waste, turning it into harmless byproducts.
So, to wrap it all up, it's pretty clear that microorganisms are our indispensable, microscopic allies. They are the planet's master recyclers, running the cycles that all life depends on. They act as our little sentinels, warning us about the health of our water, and they are our partners, providing powerful, natural solutions to our own pollution problems.
And that brings us to one final, really important question. We've learned to harness the power of microbes to clean up massive oil spills and treat our wastewater. But as we look to the future, as we face even bigger environmental challenges, what other untapped potential is just waiting for us to discover in this vast, unseen world of microbiology? The possibilities really are as endless as the microbes themselves.